Hi, this is Pam. I am a psychic medium, and I'm going to be bringing this message to you today that is from Rob Reiner, who has been coming to me for a few days, and there's been a lot of interesting messages and things that he wants to talk about. So, in this recording, I'm going to connect to him. And some of the messages I've received before I've made this video, it's just things that he's been talking with me about. So I have some of those notes that I want to share with you, but also he's going to be communicating while we're together here on this video. And I want you to think about what messages you want to receive from this experience. And somewhere in this video, there will be things revealed that will help you to continue your journey. So when I first made contact with Rob, I wasn't seeking to make contact. He came to me to talk about some of the bigger purposes of his life. And also, he really wants to focus on mental illness and how this is such a big problem right now. And just to understand more of his journey through that. And he really emphasizes a lot when he was first talking to me that he wants to tell you the truth, the real story. So he wants to give you kind of a glimpse into his world and how that helped him through some of the things that were hard, but also how he navigated that and how it came to this particular outcome. And he wants to talk a little bit about things that are bigger spiritual purposes. So there are a lot of messages there. Anyway, let me get into this. Okay, so one of the things that I pick up on his energy right away is I feel, even though he's not feeling this as much himself, there is somewhat of this sadness around him as far as he feels this energy, this emotion of sadness from him and his wife leaving at the same time, as though like he wanted to save her and keep her from this. And like if there was something he could do, he would have. Like he's the kind of person that would save anybody from anything. So like he does feel like a sense of this is something that he maybe carries a little bit of weight from, maybe a little bit of responsibility for. I think kind of bringing her into that situation, even though he knows there's a higher purpose behind all of this and a life plan and everything. He definitely feels like he wants to take all of the responsibility for the whole situation of this act and way that he passed. So I'm not going to go into details about the actual situation that happened. Instead, I want to talk more about what he wants us to know and what is important to learn from this. What are some of the lessons? So one of the things that he wants you to focus on, and something he doesn't want you to focus on, if you think about it, whenever somebody passes over, especially if it's with a traumatic event, there's always this feeling of, how could you have stopped it? Or maybe like, oh, that's a lot. That's very painful. That's that emotional pain that we feel for others, having that empathy for that situation and not wanting to be in that situation. It kind of puts us in a place of we feel that event strongly. So when we try to connect to them on the other side, we're connecting to them still initially when they first passed through that trauma rather than more of their positive life memories. So he wants you to know that he would rather if you focused on more of the good things in your life and in his life and not to see him as in pain or suffering. And I think because it's such a physical act with the way that he passed, we see that as like this, really traumatic experience that caused a lot of physical pain and a lot of emotional pain. And he doesn't want you to feel that way. He wants you to see him as more of the good things that he brought into his life, the light pathways that were in his life, like the things that he enjoyed doing and how he brought his personality through his characters and through his experiences with being in the movie industry, like actually being able to still be himself through that and bringing his own perspective and stories, points of view, and not changing who he was as far as things he really believed in, his causes, and like wanting to do bigger things in the world. So I think that a lot of the projects that he focused on were more based on how is this affecting the greater good, and how is this, giving me the opportunity, the platform to connect to people and to do those things. As he is in this experience, as he has gone through leaving his body and kind of being more in his spirit and being released from that physical part of the world, he has not completely crossed over at this time. So what I'm getting from him is that he's in between and more earthbound, and there is a reason for that. So there's sometimes spirits will get more anchored to the earth when there's something unresolved or there's something traumatic. But I want to explain that a little bit more. So it's not like he's stuck. He can cross over, but he's here for a reason, because he's here to help his children through this trauma and like what that created for them and how they can move through it and make decisions in their lives. And he actually is going to be doing that for a bit of time, and he's kind of helping that decision making in a way. One of the things he was saying is that whatever decisions they make is going to be something that he helped to guide them with. So he wants you to know that he doesn't want you to live in fear because of what happened to him, or to live in fear from things that of what could happen, or from the fact that we do have a lot of mental illness in the world right now. He doesn't want you to live from fear and knowing that that exists and that there is this level of what you would call heavier or darker energy. But he does want you to be aware of it, to not like live from it or let it guide you every step of the way, because you need to find that way that is you, that is lighter and passionate and free, but to actually be able to observe it and notice it and acknowledge it, and don't let it be not looked at, but at the same time not to live from that fear of it. So he says that in his life, he, I think very early on, knew that his son that was involved in this incident, and or allegedly involved in this incident, that he was troubled, and there was a lot of things that were in bounds. There was a lot of things that were not right. He knew this was true. This was present for a long time, but also he mentions that it was present even before he had the awareness of it. So it's something that he feels like maybe he missed the earlier signs and stages, and he could have maybe intervened sooner. Now he wants to say, like, there is this life path and plan that we choose, and maybe we think we can change things that we can't. Like, there are things that are kind of set in stone. But he does say that he wants to bring that up because he wants to teach others, especially parents, how to be aware of these little things earlier on that are pointing in the direction of there needs to be some kind of support, guidance, or intervention, or something that would create a different experience, environment, or a way of getting help or healing. So for him, he doesn't regret things in his life, but he does know that from his perspective now, he definitely missed some of those signs and could have stopped a lot of the things from progressing earlier on. And there was a point where it kind of switched and it was like out of control, is what he's describing. It's very out of control. Um, a lot of substances involved, and um, I would say a lot of imbalances, but like real actual conditions that could be managed better, I think. We sometimes don't know how to manage mental imbalances and illnesses. And so he's saying that he really tried everything. And like he would stand up for that part of himself. Like he definitely was doing whatever it took. He would do anything to make it right. And that is how he lived. And so he decided to keep it closer to him as if he was closer, then he could like manage it better and he could be a part of that journey and be able to be a positive light or be able to like guide a little bit more. However, there was a lot of, I think, back and forth, like we're not on the same page kind of thing too. So as much as he was trying to get things right, it just felt like they kept going off track. So it'd be good for a while and then it would go off. So for him that was challenging because he saw the world in a different place and he didn't realize where the experiences of his son and going through this mental illness was a place of like he couldn't identify it earlier on. He couldn't identify it being something that was like a reality for him. Like I think he saw it as like he could make choices and he could make better decisions and he just didn't. But I think that he over time began to realize that there was another way, that this was becoming a part of his son's world, and he didn't understand that reality for him was completely different and his perceptions of things were different, and maybe he was sensitive and heightened to things around him and responded to things in a way that was quite different than everybody else. So I don't think that he really was trying to not pay attention to it. I think he did began to have that awareness more, but it was just hard for him to get that deeper understanding of it, where it would be like, I can walk in your shoes and really understand where you're coming from and why this is a problem and why this keeps repeating. And, why is this something that we need to deal with so much? Like, he felt like if he would have given him the opportunity to have the best life possible and just have things kind of presented to him in a way that was so easy. It was just unfortunate that his son couldn't embrace that. He couldn't see that part of life. He feels, when I tap into the son's energy, it feels a little bit like, almost like there's two different versions of him, like a little bit split, or like my energy is not completely anchored to the earth in a way, and most people would feel if they were maybe more balanced or grounded, right? It feels like it's definitely not anchored here in a way that would produce stability and peacefulness and just like solving problems and handling chaos and things like that. It feels like it's almost like I don't want to be in my body, but I'm here. So I'm going to create a different experience. And so there's these two parts of him that is sometimes more here and sometimes not here. And this creates this dual energy that then is kind of like fighting itself in a way. So I think his sense of reality was a little bit not based in what was physically happening to him. I think his reality was more out of his body, and maybe the experiences that he encountered were then interpreted as something that was what maybe another person might see as like irrational behavior might for him seem normal, but it's from a perspective of him being out of his body. So that is a little different. It would be almost like if you were in your dreams, in a dream state, and you were just doing things that maybe they were even nonsensical. You know, maybe you're experiencing things, people in your dreams, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're just going through it and you're trying to see what it all means, and it doesn't make sense in your dreams, and maybe you don't even make sense of it when you wake up. But it's like in that dream world, there's all these different pieces that are not fluid and grounded, right? They're just all over the place of things that are in our imaginations and other worlds that we connect to in our dreams. So I feel like he kind of has this energy of being more in that space. So if he were to be in that state, let's say he's more in that dream world state, right? He's not really completely in his body. And so his mind is working from that place. It's almost like if somebody was sleepwalking and then they had some encounters while they were sleepwalking and then they don't remember it. This is what it is like for him. Sometimes he has like episodes and almost like mini rages or I don't know, like fighting energy that is coming from him going in and out of his body and not being completely in this world. So the hard part is that when he does anchor in, he has a lot of creative abilities, and he has the potential to be just as creative as the people around him, you know, his friends, his family. And to be in that world of creativity does help to anchor someone that is like that when they're in and out of their bodies. But what happens is that other people maybe trigger things within him because there's all these times that he's not in his body. So like that triggers him to like express something different that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to the physical reality. So there's also like no filter there for the difference between what is right and what is wrong. It's almost like it's always the same. The outcome is not evaluated. And so if I take an action, it's just in that dream state and it doesn't warn me. It doesn't tell me this is right or wrong. That's what I'm picking up on. So for Rob, his purpose was to come into this world to enlighten others, to find a way to speak that is bringing out what they think is something that needs to be addressed and healed. Like to truly like speak your truth, to speak about the things that are not right, to show and point out things that create this division between people and cultures and beliefs and things like that. And he wants to address also that the simplest version of his life purpose was to love himself more than he loved and cared for others. So even though he had this underlying purpose of, I want to help people understand the bigger picture and see what the possibilities are with their beliefs and the way that we support and guide other humans, I think he also was, if you really just got down to the surface level of it, it was basically, I need to love myself more than I do those things, even though those things are important. can I love myself more than that? And so I think sometimes he would direct his energy towards other beliefs and causes to keep from looking at that within a little bit. But he says he was a work in progress. He was a work in progress, and he was learning still from all these experiences. And his son probably taught him the most love of all, because then how do you love someone that takes your life, right? Allegedly, right? Like, how do you love someone that does something to you to harm you, that doesn't provide that normal connection with you, even though you try? He says his son did not hate him, but the mental prison that was in his head and the thoughts and the things that were going on there that were not in a balanced state, and also the medications he on may have exacerbated. But he says he understands that his son was in this mental prison that he couldn't escape. There was like no way out for him. But he doesn't hold hate for him or anger or anything. He really still wants to help him. And he feels like the evaluation of this particular incident will be a very complex and complicated case, but it'll also result in looking at mental illness differently, especially for parents and families. And he felt like his diagnosis was very hard to treat in the appropriate way, that it shifted and changed a lot. And there was things that could easily exacerbate it. So there was a lot of what he calls gray areas where it wasn't a black and white treatment. There wasn't anything that was going to totally change it overnight and cure it, and it would never be, anything struggling again. Like, it was going to be always hard for him, and he kind of feels like his son didn't fit into this world. He calls himself an innovator and a crusader. He's literally still being this crusader from the spirit world. In the spirit world, in that spirit form, even if he's not completely crossed over, he's still doing the crusading right now from the earth. And then when he crosses over completely, he will still be doing that. And he did try to protect his wife. It felt like he couldn't really do that in the moments leading to him passing, but he did try to protect her a lot, and his wife did question things, if they were doing things the right way. Sometimes maybe not, creating a space that would be, I guess, more with tough love and like really making bigger decisions that were harder. She questioned things a lot. And he wanted, though, within all this going on, is just a happy family life. And that's what he was trying to create. But it's not that that didn't exist. I mean, that did get created. But he also experienced kind of the dichotomy of this struggle, this mental struggle. And also with, layers of addictions. And he wants to say, in a way, it's kind of like the idea of the demons that chase you, but not the ones that are what you're thinking of when you think of that word. Like, he's saying, like, it's the ones that are inside of you, the ones that you struggle with and makes you question things. And he wants his children also to know that not only is he helping them make decisions, but they need to still live their lives in whatever way that is possible, when that is possible. That life needs to go on, even though there's this thing that they are kind of, it's like a little bit of a dark cloud that they are working through. And there's a lot of big life decisions. And he says there's also something that people say about, sometimes people will say there's a generational curse, or there's some kind of belief in your family. Something about your family could have something you're carrying energetically that could be affecting what is happening in your world. He said that He wants you to know that your belief can be anything. You don't need to be held back by your past, your family origin, even your genes. You are in the driver's seat. So it may appear like, well, why did this happen to him and his family? Was there something that caused this to happen from an ancestral place, from a past life, from a genetic perspective of mental illness? You can look at it from different perspectives, but he says he doesn't want anyone to make choices in their life based on fear, based on worrying about things that really you can't change in the moment unless you accept that you are the one that is creating your life. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that there is real mental illness in the world, and it's a serious problem right now. It's really out of control, and that is his words saying that it is not being properly addressed. He's not here to say that there's one solution or one cause, or that medications are the answer or not the answer. He's not trying to get into one point of view and say that is the way. Because even from a spiritual perspective, from what he can see now and understand, he knows that there are multiple things that are involved in these pathways. So one of the things he wants to mention is our lack of connection with each other, and how we are isolated. And a lot of times we are really stuck in our own worlds and not seeking connections and friendships, and families are living in different places and not always connecting, and we're online doing things that are not as connected to people. So he wants to bring up that when there's a self-isolation like that, when you don't feel like you fit in, or you can't find your way, or you're just like not seeking those things, it does create this imbalance that doesn't help you to deal with stressful circumstances. So he's giving the concept of, if I have something that happens that's too much for me, who do I go to? If I have no one to go to, whether that is a therapist, or it is a friend, or it's a family member, or maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's, just someone you meet in a group where you go take a class, or, you go work out at the gym and you talk to people there. If you have no outlet for releasing that stress through an activity or a connection with someone, then it begins to build up and spiral, and your mind can get really full of that clutter of not having that connection and just being emotionally not balanced, just like really all over the place with your thoughts and your emotions. I mean, I've heard many times that people live longer when they have connections to friends and things that they like to do. And, those are some of the people that live the longest and healthiest and happiest. And they are able to overcome things better. They are able to work through illnesses where they're not as, intense. So I think that that's one of his biggest things, is he really wants you to know that it's just a matter of making that choice and decision and saying, I don't have to do this alone. I can be, someone that reaches out and doesn't isolate. So he says that's one part of it. There's other things to consider. He says there are things to do with the genes, of course. He doesn't want to say that that isn't anything at all. But it's just a matter of, how are those genes activated? How are they functioning in your environment? How do they get represented? How are they expressed, right? There's a lot of things with epigenetics now where it's like the expression of the genes might get activated by stress, might get activated by environment, or something that somebody experiences that's early trauma or maybe toxins or different things. There's all these theories about epigenetics out there that you can research. He says that our genes don't define us, but they can guide us. So what he's saying there is they're kind of there. You're born with this, right? But they don't have to define our experiences. They don't have to become the outcome. So knowing kind of what you're working with early on, maybe knowing your family genes does help, but it doesn't define who you are and where your path will go. You get to make that decision. So that's one of the other things that he says is really important. And also, he has this concept of not giving up on yourself, not giving up on other people. That's one of the things he was really big on. Not giving up on family members, not giving up on things he believed in. And he feels like right now there's a whole lot of energy of giving up. Like, this is just too much. I'm giving up. And that is why we see mental illness that progresses and turns into something that's harder to deal with. And maybe it turns into something that isn't addressed properly, or it turns into an addiction, or it turns into people that feel suicidal, or they have, maybe more violent outbursts and things like that. Yeah, he says that we could do that a lot better. We could be more in that awareness and realize that we cannot do this alone. A lot of people feel alone, though, when they're in that feeling of emotional sadness or overwhelm or grief, or just not feeling like they fit in, or they're not understood, or they're not, making a difference, or not needed somehow. So I do want to bring you a message right now as I'm speaking to you about this issue that we have in the world. I want you to know that if you have any feelings of feeling suicidal, depression, like you don't belong, like you're not sure what to do, you feel isolated, you feel like you have nowhere to turn to, anything, even anxiety about your life and not feeling your best self, if you just feel like everything's out of control, I want to suggest to you to please reach out to somebody, whoever that may be. I'm also going to put a link in the description with resources for you, because I don't want you to be alone. That's his really big message for today, is he is coming here so that you will not feel alone. And your environment matters. Your compassion for yourself matters. When he's ready to cross over, he will do that from a place of peace. He already has the feeling of understanding, but he wants to have more peace for being able to bring these messages right now and to bring peace to his family. He also wants you to know that he didn't suffer. He was not in pain. And that he just simply was here more in the physical way and then not in the physical way, but still aware of his surroundings and things that were happening. And there was a bit of, I think, kind of shock at first, but not in that sense that, why did this happen to me? But more like, why couldn't I help my son? So that's where he's coming from, is always a concern for his family, for others, for his wife, for his children. And he wants you to know that people are not bad. just circumstances create outcomes that are not always what we think are in a higher purpose. But remember, he chose this life to learn lessons and for other people to learn lessons. And so it does have a higher purpose of him understanding the love within him and how it could become something that would change the world, not from the place of when he was here, when he was doing acting and doing other roles in the movie industry and just kind of helping people, guide them through those experiences of creating that bigger content that would change people so they could see those characters, right? He wants you to know that from the place he is now, where he is in this place of kind of being on the earth, but also in the spiritual form, is that he sees his purpose more of, now I understand. Now I understand. It was to come back now, today, to tell you this message so that you can live your life differently, get the help that you deserve to get, to live from a higher place, to understand that you are not defined by your environment and your circumstances, that you are in control of what this becomes. So I want to tell you about a song that was playing on the radio when I was getting messages from him one day, and I may have heard this song before. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a really pretty song, and it's called Something in the Heavens. I'm going to put a link down below. And the lyrics are very interesting, and he talks about, in the song, the lyrics are things that are bringing messages that connect to the way that he experienced life, especially as he exited. It says, tonight could be the last time your heartbeat and mine are ever this close, but life can cut like a knife. That's just how it goes. But till the day I die, I will dream of you. In a million lives, you're the one I'd choose. I'll love you till my last breath. You're gone, but something in the heavens tells me that we'll be together again. It's really pretty. Please listen to the song because it really talks about how he feels about his passing and his experiences. It definitely gives that feeling of just a kind of a sad ending in a way. Like he wishes it could have been another way. And he wishes he could have done something to help his son go on a different path. If that was him being in a different environment or them finding an earlier intervention, he wants other parents to know not to just look past it, to please address this issue. And anybody that's experiencing any kind of mental illness or emotional imbalances, anything that makes you feel like you're not feeling like yourself and, maybe you don't feel connected to the earth, please reach out to the resources below. I want to send you love and know that, we're all here to learn lessons and connect to our higher selves and be the version of ourselves that is really true, that is from that place of pure love. Sending you love and light. And if you have any questions for me, please leave your questions down below in the comments, and I will answer your questions and give you more guidance.